The summer of 1807 saw Napoleon Bonaparte at the height of his power, basking in the triumph of the treaties of Tilsit, which had redrawn the map of Europe in his favor. The French emperor sought a new kind of celebration, not in the blood of battle, but in the pageantry of tradition. With Austria humbled, Russia appeased, and Prussia on its knees, he envisioned a noble hunt. Napoleon reportedly said, chuckling, a grand spectacle that would remind his generals, ministers, and foreign dignitaries of both his power and his sophistication, amused the emperor greatly. Let it be rabbits. Then yet, unlike the deer hunts of old kings or the boar chases of German lords, Napoleon desired something unique, something peculiar. He wanted a rabbit hunt. Berthier, always eager to please, took the request as a command. And when Napoleon gave commands, the world obeyed her. So it had until now. It was to be an affair of both sport and state. Arrangements were made for a countryside estate just outside Paris. The emperor smiled often, something rare for him. A huntmaster was appointed, carriages prepared. The air was thick with excitement and the scent of lilacs. Embroidered with gold thread, his favorite hat was brushed and ready, easier to gather, easier to control. Just fine weather, polished boots, and a growing number of cages on the estate grounds. Not wild hares, mind you, but rabbits sourced from farms. No one thought to ask, what happens when farm rabbits meet soldiers? Delivered more than 3,000 fluffy creatures in cages, but no one, least of all Napoleon, gave a second thought to the prey, longed for rituals of grandeur to anchor a new era. Berthier arranged for thousands of rabbits to be collected for the event. Rumors began to spread in court. Napoleon, slayer of empires, was about to slay bunnies. But from a deep-seated tradition of monarchy and authority, the jest spread like wildfire. It was theater, display of mastery over nature, chaos, and man. The day approached. He spoke of the hunt at meetings. No omens were seen, no bad dreams reported, including the time of the hunt, the lunch menu, and the ceremonial toast. No one questioned the logic of using tame rabbits, and speeches just enough pomp to make the rabbits feel like royalty before their fate. And so the curtain was ready to rise on a farce that would soon unravel before the mightiest man in Europe. The concept of the hunt was born, not merely from whimsy, not by brute force, but precision and elegance. Kings had long associated hunting with dominion over nature, over land, complete with a forest edge and gently rolling hills. His victories on the battlefield had made him a god of war, but now he wanted to be seen as a noble ruler, elegant and refined. France, still healing from revolution and the guillotine. The idea was not only to gather ministers and generals. There would be music, food, flags. Napoleon envisioned a hunt where he could display control with grace. The location chosen was a broad meadow on a noble estate. It was close enough to Paris for convenience, but distant enough to avoid public interference. The terrain was ideal for a ceremonial hunt, open fields for visibility, and forest trails for strategic positioning. Berthier commissioned a team of aides to oversee the logistics, carriages, tents, uniforms, and firearms. Musicians were hired to play martial tunes as the guests arrived. Food was ordered from the finest chefs. The emperor's portrait was to be hung inside the banquet tent, flanked by the imperial eagle and laurel wreaths. Special hunting rifles were polished, engraved with Napoleon's initials, and distributed among elite officers. A printed program of events was prepared. No one, not even Berthier, imagined that these soft, furry extras would soon steal the whole show. Marshal Louis Alexander Berthier, ever dutiful and obsessively thorough, treated the hunt with the same rigor he applied to military campaigns. Once Napoleon approved the idea, Berthier transformed the light-hearted suggestion into a logistical operation of imperial scale. He summoned aides, secretaries, and estate stewards for a series of urgent meetings, as if war had been declared on rabbits. Maps were drawn of the estate's terrain, complete with wind direction, sun position, and line-of-sight grids for optimal shooting. "We must avoid surprises," Berthier declared, oblivious to the irony that history would soon have its own plans. A written directive was issued to gather at least 3,000 rabbits, plentiful enough to ensure everyone could claim a shot. Since wild hares were elusive and difficult to corral, Berthier opted for domestic rabbits, easily handled and transported. The order was sent to various farms across the countryside, and within days, wagon loads of rabbits began arriving in crates and cages. Some rabbits twitched nervously, others chewed straw contentedly. None had any idea they were to be the stars of a royal comedy. Couldn't 200 suffice? Berthier dismissed such concerns with a wave. His Majesty demands abundance, guarded by gendarmes as if they were prisoners of state. Berthier arranged for the rabbits to be stored in a shaded grove near the hunting grounds, to ensure they would not flee toward the nearby river. Several officers raised eyebrows. "Why so many rabbits?" Berthier said during one of the final briefings, utterly serious. If nothing else, the man knew how to stage a spectacle. The fate of the entire event was sealed, unaware of the imperial absurdity they were enabling. He even ordered color-coded ribbons tied to some rabbits, so children of noble guests could track their favorites, twitching their noses with idle curiosity, transported by wagons that creaked under the weight of crates packed tightly with furry bodies. A report was prepared detailing feeding schedules, transport routes, release timing, and post-hunt cleanup. One aide reportedly joked, while servers practiced pouring champagne without disturbing the hunt. Berthier grunted approval, already counting forward to the next shipment, nodding at each crate as if verifying a cavalry division. If Berthier had commanded rabbits at Austerlitz, we'd have beaten the Russians with lettuce. Every crate of rabbits was tagged, numbered, and catalogued. Livestock records were more detailed than some troop reports. Others huddled together. A shot from Napoleon himself would mark the hunt's opening, unalarmed by the presence of polished boots and gleaming sabers, leaned on muskets, and exchanged jokes about Napoleon's new army. A few of the servants reported extra rabbits appearing in cages. Musicians were briefed on cue timings. Even the wind direction was considered for rabbit release. This was to be a day of leisure, not a day of vigilance. The emperor must face the rabbits as he faced Austria, with telescopes and fans at the ready. Roast meats and glazed fruits. They look more ready for a picnic than a war. Then 1,000, then the rest in a grand finale. Another added, "If they charge, I'm surrendering." Their cages stacked high, labeled meticulously. The marshals and generals, though amused, respected Berthier's diligence. Unfortunately, he didn't know much about rabbitsand in that small oversight. The rabbits arrived in waves. Farmers unloaded the animals with the nonchalance of those delivering potatoes, while wines cooled in shallow basins filled with ice. The rabbits, mostly tame and well-fed, blinked under the sunlight. Some munched on hay. Berthier watched the delivery, like a general inspecting troops, clipboard in hand. 200 more to come from Burgonia, one aide reported. The rabbits were stored in a shaded orchard near the hunting field. Gendarmes bored with their unusual assignment. One officer whispered. Meanwhile, inside the hunting pavilion, servants set out silver trays of cheese. The tables glistened under sunlight, filtered through linen drapes. A separate tent was arranged for dignitaries to watch the spectacle from comfortable lounges. Bertier's instructions were specific. The rabbits would be released in sections first 500. Musicians were to begin a trumpet flourish at the moment the first wave was freed. It was theater, pure and bold Napoleon's court in nature, with nature scripted to lose. But trouble began almost immediately. Some rabbits gnawed their way out of crates during the night and were seen hopping freely. Others had begun to breed fast. One worker, unaccustomed to animals, panicked when a rabbit jumped onto his shoulder and refused to move. Still, no one raised alarm. Rabbits were harmless, after all. And so, the hunting field filled with soft fur, twitching ears, and an ominous calm that no one yet recognized as the calm before the storm. On the morning of the hunt, the final wagons arrived just before sunrise, their crates rattling with the restless energy of hundreds of rabbits. Dew still clung to the grass as laborers hurried to unload the last of the cargo under Bertier's watchful eye. The hunting field, a long stretch of manicured grass bordered by woods, had been transformed into a stage fit for imperial spectacle. Colored flags fluttered from tall poles, and hunting horns were already warming up in the distance, ready for timed release. Cages were now arranged in neat rows just behind a low hill from afar. The mass of cages looked like a strange battlefield encampment, orderly, silent, and very much alive. Some rabbits peeked through the wooden slats, blinking curiously at their surroundings, while others remained still, half asleep. The scent of hay, rabbit fur, and lemon-scented polish from nearby weapons created a bizarre blend in the air. Bertier paced between the rows, noting with satisfaction the final head count, over 3,200 rabbits. His Majesty shall not be disappointed. Assistants fed the animals bunches of greens to keep them calm until the moment of release. "You're putting them all out at once?" he asked, only to be dismissed with a glare. One of the farmers, lingering nearby, looked confused. The farmer murmured, "They're not wild. They won't scatter. They'll come straight to the food." The assumption was simple. Prey runs, hunters chase. That's how it had always been. But his approach was expected within the hour. The rabbits, unaware or perhaps unconcerned that they were the prey in a royal performance. The sounds, the smells, the tension, something was different today. The field began to buzz with anticipation. No one listened. But these were not forest rabbits, used to fear and flight. These were pampered creatures who associated humans with carrots. In one cage, a particularly plump rabbit had managed to chew a small hole and was already sniffing at a soldier's boots. A few officers joked about how easy the hunt would be. "We'll have to aim between their ears, or we'll hit nothing but air." Wine was being served to early guests, and children in frilly clothes giggled as they peeked at the cages. Napoleon had not yet arrived. The cages sat quietly, but deep within the herd, instincts were stirring. The morning sun rose high and bright, casting long shadows over the sprawling estate where the hunt was to take place. Their uniforms and gowns reflecting the grandeur of the occasion. Nobles, generals, and foreign dignitaries arrived in a procession of carriages, attending to last-minute details while musicians tuned their instruments nearby. The air was thick with anticipation, and the scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the faint aroma of gunpowder from polished muskets, making clear that the day was not merely for sport, but a symbol of French strength. Servants hurried to and fro. Napoleon appeared, dressed in his finest hunting attire, his usual stern expression softened by a rare smile. He greeted his guests with formal nods and a few words of thanks. Marshal Berthier stood by Napoleon's side, clipboard in hand, overseeing the coordination with military precision. Some masked their curiosity with cautious smiles. Others whispered jokes about the absurdity of hunting rabbits. The hunting party gathered near the crest of a hill, muskets gleaming and bayonets fixed, ready for the signal to begin. Officers exchanged polite conversation. Children, dressed in their finest, giggled as they clutched small baskets, eager to witness the event, trumpeting a call to attention that echoed across the fields, twitching noses and flicking ears as they adjusted to freedom, their muskets cracking in rapid succession, a behavior unexpected and confusing to all present. The rabbits were no ordinary prey. They had their own plan, but many shots missed their mark, flooding the open meadow with twitching noses and bounding legs, startling the rabbits more than harming them, scattering in every direction with a mix of curiosity and urgency. The musicians struck up a fanfare. A hush fell over the crowd as Napoleon raised his hunting rifle, signaling the start of the hunt. The gates to the enclosures opened slowly, and the first wave of rabbits burst forth into the open field. At first, the rabbits scattered randomly, echoing through the trees, but many pellets whistled harmlessly past their intended marks, weaving through tall grass and around tree trunks with ease. The hunters took aim. Some rabbits darted toward the hunters, unsure whether to reload or retreat. Laughter bubbled up from the crowd, some polite, others unable to contain genuine amusement at the unfolding spectacle. Napoleon's stern gaze flickered with surprise as he observed the unusual behavior of his quarry. The chase had begun, but not as anyone had anticipated. What was meant to be a demonstration of imperial control was quickly turning into an unpredictable encounter with nature's smallest soldiers, as the line between hunter and hunted began to blur. As the gates swung open, a wave of soft brown and white fur surged forward. The rabbits moved with surprising speed and coordination. The crowd watched, some leaning forward eagerly, anticipating the thrill of the chase. Muskets raised, the hunters took careful aim, fingers tightening on triggers as they sought their targets. Shots rang out. The rabbits were inexplicably running towards the men armed with muskets and rifles. To everyone's astonishment, some rabbits seemed less afraid than expected, darting toward the hunters rather than away. The generals exchanged bewildered glances. Napoleon's brow furrowed in concentration, trying to understand this unexpected behavior. The rabbits' movements were erratic, yet oddly strategic, their tiny paws thundering across the grass in an unyielding advance. Some of the smaller rabbits managed to slip between soldiers' legs, drawing laughter from the more light-hearted spectators. The children squealed with delight as rabbits hopped past them, unbothered by the crowd. A stray pellet struck a bush, sending birds flapping into the sky, adding to the chaos of sights and sounds. Startled as rabbits brushed against their boots or darted between their legs, officers shouted commands, attempting to maintain order, but the scene was quickly devolving into confusion. Bertier's face turned pale as he realized the hunt was not going according to plan. Meanwhile, several rabbits clustered together, forming unexpected groups that advanced rather than fled. The scent of gunpowder mingled oddly with the soft sounds of paws against earth. Laughter mixed with murmurs of disbelief, choosing to retreat rather than engage with the unexpected attackers. Napoleon lowered his rifle briefly, contemplating the absurdity of the unfolding scene. It became clear that the rabbits were not merely fleeing prey, they were, in their own way, staging a revolt. The first release of rabbits had set the tone for a hunt unlike any other in the annals of history. As the initial shock of the rabbit release began to settle, an unexpected realization rippled through the hunting party. Instead of scattering wildly away, whispers spread among the officers, growing into murmurs of confusion and disbelief. "Are they attacking?" one general muttered under his breath. Napoleon, standing tall and composed, narrowed his eyes, trying to make sense of this bizarre behavior. The rabbits' approach was relentless. Soldiers raised their weapons higher, firing warning shots to try and halt the onslaught. Yet, the rabbits appeared undeterred, seemingly fearless and oddly organized. Some officers stumbled backward. The noble children, once delighted, now squealed in surprise, clutching their baskets tightly. Laughter and shock mixed in equal measure as the scene grew more surreal by the second. Bertier barked orders to maintain formation, but coordination was slipping away like sand through fingers. A rabbit leaped onto the hem of a marshal's cloak, prompting a startled yelp and frantic swatting. The emperor's dignified image was momentarily undermined as he too swatted away a persistent bunny. The hunting ground, once orderly and grand, descended into chaos, with men dodging small furry invaders. Some soldiers dropped their weapons. Rumors began to circulate that these rabbits were domesticated and had lost their instinct to flee humans. Instead of fear, they seemed to recognize humans as friends or sources of food, turning the hunters into the hunted. Napoleon's advisors exchanged embarrassed glances, realizing that their prestigious event was unraveling fast. The so-called rabbit war was no longer a joke, it was a full-blown, uncontrollable farce. The nobles, clad in their finest attire, were unprepared for the unexpected siege of furry invaders. What began as amused smiles quickly turned into wide-eyed panic as rabbits approached with surprising boldness. Lady Genevieve, a prominent aristocrat, shrieked as a rabbit nibbled on the hem of her silk gown. Gentlemen tried to maintain decorum, but found themselves hopping back in alarm, trying to shake off persistent bunnies. Some grasped their walking sticks defensively, only to be outmaneuvered by agile creatures darting around their feet. Whispers of "this is madness" floated through the crowd as rabbits swarmed the fringes of the gathering, their instruments lowering as they took in the chaotic scene. A prince dropped his monocle when a rabbit leaped onto his polished boot, sending it skittering across the grass. The musicians faltered mid-tune. Children's laughter gave way to nervous giggles as their baskets were quickly abandoned in favor of clinging to their parents. Servants scurried to assist their masters, but found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer number of furry assailants. The hunting party's discipline crumbled as nobles scrambled for higher ground or shelter behind tents. Marshal Berthier barked commands to regain order, but his voice was lost amid the commotion and laughter. Even Napoleon himself found his stately composure challenged as a particularly daring rabbit hopped onto his foot. Attempts to shoo away the rabbits only seemed to encourage them further, as if emboldened by the attention. The scent of freshly disturbed earth mixed with muskets, smoke, as shots fired sporadically, though few found their mark. Some nobles attempted to rally and form defensive circles, but coordination was nearly impossible amidst the mayhem. Amid the panic, a few guests tried to capture rabbits, perhaps to turn the tide, or simply for amusement. One elderly countess was seen laughing hysterically, unable to contain the absurdity of the situation. The entire event teetered between a noble hunt and a comedy of errors, with rabbits firmly in control. The question on everyone's mind was no longer who would win the hunt, but rather how they would escape the furry onslaught, shouting instructions that were quickly drowned out by laughter and screams. As chaos escalated, it became clear that the rabbits were not retreating, but advancing boldly across the field. Soldiers stumbled backwards, startled by the swarm of small creatures weaving through their legs. Napoleon's aides struggled to maintain order, their fear replaced by delight as the rabbits ignored the chaos around them. The rabbits, far from being frightened prey, seemed to sense an opportunity to turn the tables. Officers found themselves dodging furry assailants rather than hunting elusive game. Some hunters dropped their muskets in surprise, opting to shield themselves instead of firing. The children's laughter grew louder. Bertier's face grew red with frustration as he attempted to organize a counterattack against the unexpected foes. The rabbits clustered into groups, moving with a strange, almost tactical rhythm. Napoleonic soldiers, trained for war against men, were ill-equipped to handle this unusual adversary. The field resembled a battlefield turned upside down, where the hunters were now the hunted, retreating toward the safety of the estate's mansion, blending with the sounds of panicked shouts and thudding paws. A rabbit hopped onto an officer's horse, causing the animal to rear and throw its rider. The spectacle was both ridiculous and humbling, a grand army bested by creatures no bigger than a loaf of bread. Some guests abandoned the field. Despite attempts to regroup, the hunting party was overwhelmed by the relentless advance. Rumors spread that the rabbit's unusual behavior was a reaction to domestication, confusing flight with affection. Laughter echoed through the estate grounds. The rabbit war was becoming a legendary fiasco, one that would be recounted with disbelief for generations. Even Napoleon could not help but chuckle at the absurdity, though he maintained his dignity amidst the chaos. The day's grand spectacle was dissolving into a comic defeat, one fluffy rabbit at a time. As the rabbits advanced relentlessly, the unthinkable happened. Napoleon Bonaparte found himself forced to retreat. His usual commanding presence wavered as furry invaders crowded his feet, hopping fearlessly and nibbling at his boots. The emperor's hunting rifle, once a symbol of imperial authority, hung useless in his hands. Courtiers gasped in disbelief. The leader who had conquered Europe was now fleeing from rabbits. "It is unprecedented," muttered one general, struggling to maintain composure amid the spectacle. Napoleon mounted his carriage hastily, signaling aides to follow as the furry onslaught grew closer. Rabbits surrounded the vehicle, their numbers seemingly multiplying with every moment. Horses, startled by the sudden commotion, reared and whinnied, adding to the confusion. The carriage rolled forward slowly, Napoleon's face a mask of determination mixed with disbelief. Officers tried to clear a path, waving muskets and shouting commands, but the rabbits persisted. Servants hurried to close carriage doors, blocking rabbits from entering, but unable to prevent the chaos outside. The image of the emperor fleeing his own hunt spread quickly among the witnesses. Some onlookers stifled laughter. Others simply stared in shock at the scene unfolding before them. The hunt, meant to be a display of control and power, had become an embarrassing rout. Rumors later claimed that Napoleon's famous stoicism cracked as he swatted a particularly bold rabbit. The carriage finally escaped the field, leaving behind a scene of joyful rabbits bounding triumphantly. Soldiers regrouped cautiously, many still wary of the seemingly fearless creatures. The rabbit war was not a battle won, but a hilarious retreat chronicled in whispered anecdotes. Surrounded by an unexpected blockade, hundreds of relentless rabbits, weaving around the wheels and nibbling at the carriage's ornate woodwork. Despite the setback, Napoleon's reputation endured, though this event became a favorite source of court gossip. The emperor's unexpected flight marked a turning point in the hunt, one that would be remembered far longer than any victory. Napoleon's carriage came to a slow halt near the edge of the hunting field. The small creatures hopped tirelessly inside. The emperor and his close aides exchanged uneasy glances, realizing they were momentarily trapped. The horses, sensing the agitation outside, stomped nervously, their eyes wide with confusion. Attempts to shoo the rabbits away were met with surprising persistence as the animals refused to yield ground. Servants inside the carriage hurried to barricade the doors, locking them tightly against the furry invaders. Outside, officers brandished muskets and riding crops, trying to clear a path through the hopping masses. But the rabbits, more curious than frightened, seemed to enjoy the commotion, hopping up and down with surprising agility. Napoleon, ever the strategist, leaned forward to assess the situation, searching for any possible escape route. The scene was almost surreal. An emperor besieged by tiny, unarmed creatures, his dignity challenged like never before. A few brave rabbits managed to leap onto the steps of the carriage, peering inside with twitching whiskers. Courtiers tried to stifle laughter, though some openly chuckled at the bizarre siege. The situation dragged on for several tense minutes, with no clear resolution in sight. Outside the carriage windows, the rabbits' twitching noses and bright eyes were an odd contrast to the tension within. Some soldiers joked that this was the first time the French army had been surrounded by an enemy they couldn't T-shoot. Napoleon's aides debated whether to force the horses forward through the rabbits or wait for reinforcements. Became an enduring symbol of the hunt's farcical nature. Meanwhile, the rabbits showed no signs of aggression, their siege more curious than hostile. Eventually, the carriage began to inch forward as some rabbits hopped aside, seemingly losing interest. The siege ended as suddenly as it began, leaving behind stories that would grow into legend. The image of the emperor trapped inside his carriage, beset by rabbits, became an enduring symbol of the hunt's farcical nature. Amidst the chaos and commotion of the hunt, a quiet but pervasive undercurrent of amusement spread among the officers. Many struggled to maintain their stoic military demeanor, but their eyes betrayed the humor of the situation. Behind clenched jaws, suppressed chuckles escaped as rabbits continued their unexpected assault. Lieutenant Dubois, known for his serious nature, was caught stifling a grin as a rabbit brushed past his boot. Officers exchanged quick glances, silently acknowledging the absurdity unfolding around them. Some placed hands over their mouths to hide smirks, while others subtly shook their heads in disbelief. The tension of the hunt gave way to a collective, though unspoken, recognition of the farce. We have faced armies, but never such fearless foes, a seasoned captain quietly remarked. Conversations dwindled as eyes darted to the relentless rabbits weaving through ranks. Even Berdier's usual rigid posture softened momentarily as he tried to maintain order with an ironic smile. The music from the pavilion continued, though it now sounded strangely out of place amidst the chaos. One officer whispered, "At least the rabbits fight with honor, no cowardly retreats here." Attempts to rally the men were met with subtle laughter, the mood shifting from fear to bemused camaraderie. Some officers began to joke quietly about the furred enemy taking over the battlefield. The silent laughter was a balm against embarrassment, a way to cope with the surreal circumstances. Napoleon himself caught glimpses of these suppressed smiles, recognizing the human side beneath the uniforms. The hunt was no longer just a spectacle. It had become a story to be shared in mess halls for years to come. Officers silently vowed to outlast the rabbits, not with muskets, but with humor and patience. In the midst of an imperial farce, their silent laughter was a small rebellion against humiliation. Preparations for the grand banquet continued inside the lavish pavilion, set with gleaming silverware and crystal glasses filled with sparkling wine, plating delicate pastries, roasted game, and seasonal fruits for the anticipated celebration. The rabbit war had, inadvertently, united men through shared amusement as much as shared adversity. As the hunting chaos unfolded outside, tables were draped with fine linens, chefs bustled in the kitchens, entered cautiously, unsure if the feast would proceed as planned, their tunes attempting to soothe the lingering tension from the hunt. Outside, the sounds of laughter, shouts, and the patter of tiny paws grew louder, but inside the tent, order and elegance prevailed. Guests, some with stained clothes and disheveled hair. Napoleon, ever the consummate host, arrived shortly after, his attire slightly rumpled but his composure intact. He raised a glass in toast, attempting to steer the event back to dignity and grace amidst the earlier disorder. The musicians played soft melodies. Conversations turned to light-hearted recounting of the earlier rabbit antics, with noble guests exchanging amused anecdotes. Servants moved quickly to refresh drinks and replace toppled plates, doing their best to maintain the illusion of grandeur. A few officers joked about inviting the rabbits to join the feast, eliciting laughter that echoed through the hall. Despite the mishaps, the food was exquisite, and guests soon found themselves relaxing into the warmth of camaraderie. The rabbit war solidified its place as a legendary tale of imperial folly. The banquet succeeded in reminding all present that even the greatest leaders must sometimes laugh at themselves. Tales of the rabbit war were recounted with exaggerated flair, turning embarrassment into entertainment, alongside detailed reports of rabbit movements and the hunting party's responses. Napoleon himself laughed quietly, acknowledging the absurdity without losing his imperial dignity. The warmth of the fire and wine overcoming memories of the day's chaos. From the initial release to the emperor's retreat with military precision, the banquet became a celebration not of conquest, but of resilience and humor in the face of unexpected defeat. Guests toasted to the emperor's good humor and the unpredictability of life, their spirits lifting with every clink of glasses, overwhelming the hunters and turning the event into a spectacle beyond control. Outside, the rabbits continued their roam, unaware of the human revelry taking place nearby. The feast stretched late into the evening, as plates were cleared and candles dimmed, though the hunt had failed, occasionally interjecting with questions about logistics and timing. The morning after the chaotic hunt, Napoleon and his closest advisors gathered to review the day's unprecedented events. Maps of the estate were spread out, framing the event as an unusual challenge to be studied. Berthier presented a thorough account. Despite the embarrassment, the staff sought to understand what had gone so catastrophically wrong. One theory proposed that the domesticated rabbits had lost their natural fear of humans, leading to their bold behavior. Another suggestion blamed the sheer number of rabbits. Some speculated that the rabbits' behavior was influenced by previous feeding by caretakers, associating humans with food rather than threat. The hunters' unfamiliarity with rabbit habits was cited as a major factor in their failure to anticipate the animals' reactions. Napoleon listened intently. The event was ultimately seen as a lesson in underestimating the unpredictable forces of nature. Advisors recommended greater caution and better planning for any future hunts involving live animals. The rabbit war was humorously dubbed a revolt of the fluff among the staff, a phrase that quickly caught on. Despite the humiliation, Napoleon maintained his usual composure. He reportedly joked that perhaps next time they would hunt something less troublesome, like shadows. The incident became a favorite anecdote in court circles, reminding all of the limits of control. Berthier vowed to learn from the mistakes, though he privately hoped never to organize a rabbit hunt again. The event inspired satirical poems and caricatures that spread through Parisian salons and taverns. For the common people, the rabbit war became a symbol of the fallibility of even the greatest rulers. Historians later debated the significance, some seeing it as a humorous footnote, others as a metaphor for hubris. Ultimately, the hunt taught that even emperors could be outwitted by the smallest and fluffiest of adversaries. News of Napoleon's ill-fated rabbit hunt quickly escaped the confines of the imperial court, spreading through Paris like wildfire. Satirical pamphlets were printed depicting the emperor as a man fleeing from tiny, fluffy foes. Caricatures showed rabbits wearing little tricorn hats and chasing soldiers, a humorous reversal of roles. Patrons laughing heartily as they recounted the rabbit war. Parisian taverns buzzed with gossip, using it as a metaphor for overreach and folly. Playwrights incorporated the tale into comedies. The story became a favorite subject for poets who penned verses mocking the grandeur of the hunt, recognizing the challenges of managing an empire. Even political opponents of Napoleon seized the opportunity to undermine his image with witty jabs. But the story had taken on a life of its own, often smiling but declining detailed comment. Despite the humor, some sympathized with the emperor. Courtiers attempted to hush the rumors. Foreign diplomats exchanged amused glances when asked about the event, used to describe any situation where the unexpected turns the tables. The phrase "fighting rabbits" entered common parlance. Children in Paris played games pretending to be brave soldiers, outsmarted by cunning rabbits, inspiring songs and ballads that spread beyond France's borders. The incident became part of popular culture, occasionally making light-hearted references to the event, capturing the humor and irony with exaggerated strokes. Artists sketched scenes of the chaotic hunt. Napoleon himself reportedly tolerated the jokes with a dry wit, blending fact with folklore in equal measure, a reminder that even great power could be humbled by the smallest challengers. The Rabbit War became an enduring legend. Historians later cited the event as an example of the unpredictable nature of human endeavors. The tale was retold at salons and in classrooms. For generations, the hunt served as both entertainment and cautionary tale about pride and preparation. Ultimately, the legacy of the Rabbit War outlived the actual hunt, cementing its place in history as a curious and amusing episode. In the quiet solitude of his chambers, Napoleon pondered the events of the day. Far from the laughter and gossip, the hunt's failure was a rare blow to his pride, yet he approached it with characteristic pragmatism. He recognized that even the mightiest could face unexpected challenges, and that humility was a necessary virtue. Letters to close friends revealed a man both amused and thoughtful about the absurdity he had experienced. He mused that the rabbits, in their innocence, had unwittingly taught him a lesson in control and unpredictability. Napoleon chuckled at the idea that such small creatures could disrupt imperial plans so thoroughly. The event reminded him of the delicate balance between power and nature, order and chaos. He resolved to apply the lessons learned to future endeavors, both on the battlefield and beyond. The private emperor, away from public scrutiny, found comfort in humor as a tool for resilience. His reflections showed a man capable of self-awareness, willing to acknowledge folly without losing dignity. He even joked that perhaps his next conquest would be over his own temper and impatience. Diaries of confidants recorded moments of laughter during their meetings, the emperor sharing the tale with dry wit. The Rabbit War became a metaphor in his private conversations for unexpected setbacks and the value of grace. He admitted that the event had humanized him in the eyes of those close to him. The humility shown strengthened his relationships with advisors who appreciated his candidness. Napoleon's ability to find humor in defeat demonstrated leadership beyond mere military prowess. In his mind, the rabbits had won a small battle, but the war for greatness continued unabated. The episode remained a cherished story within the inner circle, a reminder that even emperors are not infallible. It was this blend of humor and humility that would endure long after the hunt faded from public memory, turning the roundup into a festive occasion filled with laughter. Ultimately, Napoleon's private reflections revealed a leader shaped by both triumph and the occasional fluffy adversary. After the chaotic hunt, the estate's staff began the arduous task of gathering the scattered rabbits, following the marshal's instructions to ensure no rabbits were left behind. Men and women moved through the fields, nets and cages in hand, prepared to restore order. The rabbits, now emboldened by freedom, scattered in all directions, making capture difficult. Some hopped calmly toward their caretakers, while others darted quickly into thickets and underbrush. The process became a test of patience as the fluffy rebels showed surprising cunning. Children from nearby villages joined in. The staff worked methodically. Several rabbits were found nesting in unexpected places, haylofts, carriage wheels, and even tents. The countryside echoed with the sounds of gentle coaxing and soft thuds as rabbits were gently caught. Some hunters who had previously aimed muskets now carefully coaxed the animals into cages. The roundup took several days, far longer than originally planned, exhausting the staff. Napoleon observed from a distance, his expression a mix of amusement and relief. The legend of the Rabbit War lived on, told with smiles and shakes of the head. Advisors discussed ways to prevent such an incident in the future, considering more humane control methods. Local farmers speculated on the hunt's failure, sharing stories of the Great Rabbit Rebellion. The legend of the Rabbit War lived on, told with smiles and shakes of the head. The roundup became a symbol of reconciliation between man and nature after the day's folly. As order was restored, the estate returned to its usual calm, the rabbits safely confined once more. The episode left lasting memories for all involved, a reminder of the unpredictable spirit of life. Napoleon personally thanked the staff for their perseverance and good humor during the ordeal. The final roundup closed the chapter on the most unusual hunt in French history, though order was restored. As the dust settled and the rabbits were rounded up, a calm returned to the estate grounds. Napoleon sat quietly in his study, contemplating the day's extraordinary events. He recognized that this hunt was unlike any other, marked not by triumph, but by unexpected humor and humility. The lessons learned extended beyond the field, touching on leadership and the unpredictability of nature. Courtiers who had witnessed the chaos shared stories that blended amusement with admiration for the emperor's grace. The Rabbit War became a symbol of human fallibility and resilience, told in salons and taverns alike. Artists captured scenes of the hunt with whimsy, immortalizing the rabbit's unlikely victory. Historians debated the event's significance, some dismissing it as folly, others as a metaphor for hubris. Napoleon's advisors drafted plans to prevent future embarrassments, learning from the day's mishaps. Despite the farce, the emperor's reputation endured, tempered by his ability to laugh at himself. The story served as a reminder that power is not absolute, and even great leaders face unforeseen challenges. Villagers nearby still told tales of the day the rabbits conquered the mighty French army. The hunt's legacy lived on in folklore, a quirky footnote in the grand saga of Napoleon's reign. For Napoleon, the event was a personal reminder of the need for adaptability and humor. The rabbits, small yet fearless, had left an indelible mark on history. The imperial hunt was remembered not for its success, but for the laughter and stories it inspired. As the sun set on the estate, peace returned, and the world moved on from the day of fluffy rebellion. The Rabbit War stood as a testament to the unexpected twists life can take, even under the watchful eye of an emperor. And so, the tale was told and retold, a curious chapter in the annals of history where rabbits won a rare battle. It was a hunt like no other, unforgettable, improbable, and forever etched in legend. Years after the infamous hunt, the story of the Rabbit War continued to captivate audiences across France and beyond. The tale became a favorite in children's books, teaching lessons of humility and unexpected outcomes. Playwrights adapted the event into comedic plays, delighting audiences with reenactments of the chaotic chase. Artists included whimsical rabbit motifs in portraits of Napoleon, blending humor with historical reverence. The phrase "fighting rabbits" entered everyday language as a metaphor for unforeseen challenges. Scholars examined the event as a curious cultural phenomenon, balancing fact with folklore. Napoleon's descendants embraced the story with good humor, recognizing its place in family lore. Museums displayed artifacts and caricatures related to the hunt, preserving its memory for future generations. The event inspired festivals in small French towns, celebrating the quirky episode with games and costumes. Historians debated the symbolic meaning of the Rabbit War for years, exploring themes of power and nature. Letters from contemporaries revealed that Napoleon himself occasionally referenced the hunt with a dry smile. The rabbit's unexpected victory was seen as a charming reminder that even the greatest plans can be undone, revealing the emperor's capacity for humility and humor. The story endured as a humanizing anecdote across Europe. The Rabbit War was recounted as a delightful oddity amid the grand narratives of history. The legacy of the hunt highlighted the unpredictable intersection of nature and human ambition. Scholars noted how the tale softened perceptions of Napoleon, adding depth to his complex legacy. The Rabbit War became a symbol of resilience, laughter, and the unexpected twists that life offers. Even today, the story is retold with smiles and chuckles, a testament to its timeless appeal. An enduring reminder that sometimes the smallest adversaries leave the biggest marks. The final laugh belonged not just to the rabbits, but to all who find joy in life's surprises. And so, the legend lives on.